What shocking secrets could a queen's final will hold that might shake an entire monarchy? When Queen Elizabeth II passed away, the world mourned the loss of a towering figure of history and tradition. But behind the somber public ceremonies, the royal family faced a moment unlike any other. A sealed envelope that held the late Queen's final wishes, ready to alter their lives forever. Princess Anne's fingers trembled slightly as she held the envelope, the air in Buckingham Palace's grand drawing room heavy with unspoken anticipation. The Queen had always been meticulous in her decisions, and her will was no exception. Yet what choices had she made about her cherished estates, her iconic jewelry, and her grandchildren's futures? Why had she chosen Anne to unveil these secrets? And most intriguingly, how would her final wishes redefine the monarchy itself? Let's get into details. Anne's role as the reader of the will had surprised many. While King Charles was the obvious figurehead of the family, the Queen's choice of her only daughter to unveil her final wishes spoke volumes about their unique bond. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense demeanor, was seen as the steadying force amidst the often chaotic royal dynamic. As she carefully broke the seal, her expression betrayed a rare vulnerability, a stark contrast to her usual stoic facade. The will began with a personal message from the late Queen. Anne's voice wavered slightly as she read aloud her mother's opening words. It was a deeply touching acknowledgement of her family's service and sacrifices over the years, a reflection on her own reign, and a heartfelt plea for unity moving forward. The room fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone present. But as the will transitioned from sentiment to specifics, the atmosphere shifted. The Queen had always been a guardian of tradition, yet her decisions now seemed to reflect an effort to balance the old with the new. Windsor Castle, steeped in centuries of royal history, was to remain under the stewardship of the reigning monarch, ensuring its role as a symbol of continuity. Balmoral, however, was a different story. The Queen's beloved Scottish retreat, a sanctuary where she spent cherished moments with her family, would not follow the expected path. Anne paused, her gaze moving across the room. Balmoral, the will revealed, would be jointly inherited by multiple family members, a decision that had many implications. While this arrangement honored the Queen's personal memories of shared summers and family gatherings, it raised immediate questions. How would this shared inheritance function? Could the family navigate these complexities without discord? A soft murmur rippled through the room, the first sign of unease. It was Sandringham that delivered the first true shock. The Queen had decided to entrust the estate, traditionally held by the monarch, to Princess Anne herself. The rationale behind this move was explained in detail. Sandringham held a special place in Anne's heart, tied to personal milestones and quiet moments of reflection with her mother. The gesture was deeply personal, but not everyone was pleased. King Charles's expression tightened, and Prince Andrew shifted in his seat, his discontent poorly concealed. As the session continued, the Queen's will revealed layer after layer of her intentions. Jewelry, with its rich symbolism and personal history, became a focal point. The Vladimir tiara, one of the most iconic pieces in the Queen's collection, was bequeathed to Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge. It was a significant nod to her role as the future Queen Consort, but it also marked a new chapter in royal tradition. Other jewels, carefully chosen for their sentimental ties, were designated for Princess Charlotte, ensuring the next generation carried forward the monarchy's legacy. Yet the surprises didn't end there. Anne read on, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. Prince Harry, often at the center of royal controversies, had not been excluded. A ceremonial sword, one that had belonged to King George VI, was left to him. The symbolism was striking, a nod to Harry's military service and his enduring connection to the family, despite his departure from royal duties. It was a gesture of reconciliation, but whether it would be received as such remained to be seen. The tension in the room grew palpable. The will was more than just a division of wealth. It was a roadmap for the monarchy's future. Each decision carried weight, signaling shifts in power, responsibility, and legacy. Anne continued to read, her voice unwavering despite the charged atmosphere. The Queen's words, written with care and clarity, began to reveal a vision that prioritized unity and adaptation over rigid tradition. As the first part of the will concluded, the family was left reeling from its implications. For some, it felt like a reaffirmation of their roles within the monarchy. For others, it was a stark reminder of the shifting dynamics within the family. Anne folded the papers carefully, her expression unreadable. The room was silent once more, the gravity of what had been revealed sinking in. Outside, the world waited for news of the will's contents, speculating on what changes might be coming to the royal family. Inside Buckingham Palace, however, the mood was far more complex. The Queen's final wishes had been spoken, but their consequences were just beginning to unfold. The echoes of Princess Anne's voice still lingered in the room long after she finished reading the first section of the will. Silence enveloped the space, punctuated only by the occasional creak of the antique furniture as members of the royal family shifted uneasily in their seats. The gravity of what had been revealed was settling in, but no one spoke. It was as if any utterance might break the delicate balance holding the moment together. Outside the palace, the world continued to buzz with speculation. The press was relentless, with headlines predicting seismic shifts in royal dynamics and the fate of the monarchy itself. Yet, within the gilded walls, the family was grappling with something far more personal. The Queen's words had stirred not only questions about inheritance, but also deep, unresolved emotions among those gathered. Princess Anne, ever composed, carefully unfolded the next set of papers. She glanced briefly at King Charles, whose expression betrayed nothing. It was his turn to be addressed in the will, and the room collectively held its breath. The Queen had always entrusted him with great responsibility, and her final words were no exception. Charles was to inherit Sandringham, a decision that surprised no one given its traditional place within the monarchy. However, the estate came with stipulations, an expectation that it would serve as a bridge between the family and the public in the years to come. The Queen's words emphasized modernizing royal traditions while preserving their essence. Sandringham was not just an inheritance, it was a challenge. Charles, though stoic, seemed to absorb the weight of her instructions, his jaw tightening as Anne read on. The estate, she said, was to host more public events, breaking down the perceived barriers between the monarchy and its people. This subtle nudge toward openness resonated with her long-standing commitment to adapting the monarchy for modern times. As Anne continued, another revelation stirred fresh tension. Balmoral, the beloved Scottish retreat, was not to be entirely controlled by Charles as many had presumed. Instead, the Queen had chosen to divide its stewardship among her children, with Princess Anne taking a significant role in its care. The rationale was clear. Balmoral had always been more than a royal residence. It was a sanctuary for the family. By involving multiple heirs, the Queen hoped to preserve its spirit of unity, a place where her descendants could gather without the weight of royal protocols. Prince Andrew, seated near the corner of the room, raised an eyebrow. His discontent had been simmering since Sandringham's allocation, and now it seemed to deepen. Balmoral was a place where he too had shared countless memories, yet his role in its future appeared diminished. The Queen's choices, while practical, were beginning to draw invisible lines within the family, and those divisions were becoming harder to ignore. Anne's voice remained steady as she shifted to the next section, a portion of the will that addressed the younger generation. The Queen's grandchildren were not overlooked, and her words reflected a deep understanding of their unique positions within the royal hierarchy. For Prince William, there was no ambiguity. His role as the future king had been solidified long before, but the Queen had left him more than just a title. Windsor Castle, with all its historical significance, was entrusted to him, not simply as a residence, but as a symbol of continuity and stability for the monarchy. Kate Middleton, too, received a mention that carried immense weight. The Queen acknowledged her steadfast dedication to the family and her growing influence as the future Queen Consort. To Kate, the Queen bequeathed several pieces from her personal jewelry collection, including the famed Vladimir tiara. It was a gesture that went beyond material value, signaling the Queen's confidence in Kate's ability to uphold the monarchy's legacy with grace and poise. As Anne read the Queen's words for Prince Harry, a subtle tension filled the air once more. The Queen had chosen to leave him a deeply symbolic item. a ceremonial sword that once belonged to King George VI. The significance of this gift was unmistakable. It acknowledged Harry's military service and his enduring connection to the family, even as he charted a path outside the royal fold. For Harry, it was a reminder that his place in the family was never fully severed, despite the controversies and distance. Meghan Markle was not mentioned explicitly, but the Queen's decision to include Harry at all was telling. It was a gesture that left room for interpretation. Was it a peace offering or simply a reminder of the expectations that came with his lineage? The room remained silent as Anne continued, each word weighed carefully by those present. As the session drew to a close, the Queen's intentions began to take shape in the minds of the family. Her choices were not simply about distributing assets, they were a carefully crafted strategy to guide the monarchy into the future. The emphasis on shared responsibilities, personal connections, and symbolic gestures reflected a vision that blended tradition with modernity. Yet, as Anne folded the papers and set them aside, it was clear that the Queen's decisions had also left questions in their wake. Would the shared inheritance of Balmoral bring the family closer together, or would it amplify existing tensions? How would Harry interpret his symbolic gift, and what would it mean for his relationship with the family? These were uncertainties that could not be resolved in a single sitting. The royal family began to disperse, each member retreating into their thoughts. Outside, the day carried on as usual, but within Buckingham Palace, the weight of the Queen's words lingered. For all her wisdom and foresight, the path ahead remained uncertain. As the doors closed behind them, one thing was undeniable. The Queen's final will had left a mark, not just on the family, but on the monarchy itself. The days following the initial readings of the Queen's will were marked by a strange, tense quiet at Buckingham Palace. On the surface, the royal family maintained their usual composure. But beneath the calm exterior, emotions churned. Each member processed the revelations in their own way, reflecting on what the Queen's choices meant for them personally and for the monarchy as a whole. Yet the weight of unfinished business loomed large. There were still sections of the will yet to be unveiled, and those promised to be the most revealing of all. Princess Anne once again took her place at the head of the table in the grand drawing room, her steady presence a quiet assurance amidst the uncertainty. This time, the focus shifted to the Queen's vision for the younger generation of royals, and how their roles would evolve in the coming years. As Anne unfolded the next section, a palpable sense of anticipation filled the room. These weren't merely instructions for distribution. They were a blueprint for the future of the monarchy. The Queen had always believed in preparing the next generation for the responsibilities they would inherit. To Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, she left not material wealth but guidance, outlined in a series of personal letters. These letters, written in the Queen's own hand, were filled with wisdom gleaned from decades of service. Each child's letter was tailored to their future role, a reflection of the Queen's careful planning. For George, the Queen emphasized the importance of balance, maintaining the dignity of the crown while understanding the world beyond the palace gates. His letter included anecdotes from her own early years as a young heir, offering insight into navigating the unique pressures of royal life. Charlotte's letter highlighted the vital role of strength and compassion, urging her to embrace the modern challenges of her position while honoring the traditions of her ancestors. Louis, though still very young, was given words of encouragement to grow into his own identity, free of the immediate pressures of succession but vital as a supporting figure in the family. Anne paused for a moment, looking around the room as the significance of the letters sank in. This gesture from the Queen went beyond the practicalities of a will. It was a deeply personal connection, a way of remaining present in the lives of her great-grandchildren even after her passing. The room remained silent, a rare unity in a family often characterized by its internal complexities. The Queen's attention to the younger generation extended beyond her direct descendants. For Zara Tindall and Peter Phillips, the Queen's eldest grandchildren, her will recognized their unique contributions to the family's image. Though they held no formal royal titles, Zara and Peter were entrusted with specific heirlooms tied to their shared moments with the Queen, tokens of her love and acknowledgement of their importance within the broader family circle. Kate Middleton was once again a central figure in this section of the will. Beyond the jewels she had already been bequeathed, the Queen entrusted Kate with an unexpected role, preserving the family's cultural and historical legacy. This included responsibility for curating certain elements of the royal archives and overseeing the restoration of select artifacts from the family's extensive collection. The task was more than a gesture. It reflected the Queen's confidence in Kate's ability to balance tradition with the demands of a modern monarchy. As Anne read on, another significant revelation emerged. The Queen had set aside a fund specifically for the education and development of the younger royals, emphasizing the importance of equipping them with the skills necessary to navigate an ever-changing world. This fund, separate from the family's wealth, was a testament to her forward-thinking approach, a recognition that the survival of the monarchy depended on adaptation. But not all the revelations were so warmly received. Prince Andrew's name appeared sparingly in this section, a stark contrast to the mentions of others. The Queen had acknowledged his presence in the family, but had made it clear through her allocations that his role moving forward would be limited. This omission was not lost on anyone in the room, least of all Andrew himself. Though he maintained a composed demeanor, the tension in his posture spoke volumes. Prince Harry, too, was a focus of this portion of the will, though in ways that seemed to leave more questions than answers. The Queen had made provisions for his children, Archie and Lilibet, ensuring they would not be excluded from the family's legacy despite their parents' departure from royal duties. However, there were no further mentions of Harry's future role within the family, leaving an air of ambiguity around his relationship with the institution. As the session drew to a close, the family's reactions varied widely. For some, the Queen's choices were a validation of their roles and contributions. For others, they were a reminder of the shifting dynamics within the monarchy. Yet, for all the emotions stirred, one thing was undeniable. The Queen's meticulous planning reflected her unwavering dedication to both her family and the monarchy. The family dispersed once more, each member retreating to their private quarters to digest the implications of what had been revealed. Princess Anne lingered in the drawing room, folding and refolding the papers in front of her. The weight of her responsibility as the will's reader was clear, but so too was her determination to honor her mother's wishes. Outside, the day was unremarkable, the world continuing as it always did. But within the walls of Buckingham Palace, the seeds of change had been firmly planted. The Queen's vision for the future of the monarchy was becoming clearer, but it was up to those she left behind to carry it forward. As the palace settled into an uneasy quiet, one question loomed over them all. Could the family rise to the occasion? Or would these revelations mark the beginning of deeper divisions? Only time would tell. The days stretched into weeks, and the ripples of the Queen's will began to take on a life of their own. The royal family, known for its outward unity, now found itself navigating increasingly choppy waters behind closed doors. For some members, the Queen's choices were a reaffirmation of their roles within the monarchy. For others, they were a bitter pill to swallow, exposing the cracks in relationships that had long been papered over by royal protocol. Princess Anne's role as the executor of the will had earned her respect, but it also placed her squarely in the middle of the brewing tensions. She maintained her characteristic poise, yet even she couldn't ignore the weight of her mother's decisions. The next session promised to delve deeper into the Queen's vision for the monarchy's future, addressing issues that would undoubtedly shape the family for generations to come. As Anne began to read once more, the focus shifted to the broader implications of the Queen's allocations. The Queen had long understood that the monarchy could not survive without evolving to meet the expectations of a modern world. To this end, her will outlined a series of initiatives designed to bridge the gap between tradition and progress. These were not material inheritances, but rather directives aimed at redefining the monarchy's relationship with the public. One such initiative centered on the use of royal estates. While properties like Windsor Castle and Sandringham were steeped in tradition, the Queen had stipulated that they be opened more frequently to the public for cultural and educational events. This move was not without controversy. Some family members, particularly King Charles, viewed these changes as a potential dilution of the monarchy's mystique. Others, like Prince William, saw them as necessary steps to maintain the monarchy's relevance. Anne's voice carried a sense of purpose as she detailed these plans, but her calm delivery did little to soothe the growing unease in the room. The changes were bold, even for a monarch as forward-thinking as the Queen. They signaled a willingness to adapt, but they also hinted at a growing urgency to secure the monarchy's place in an increasingly skeptical society. The conversation turned inward as the Queen's decisions regarding individual family members came to light. Prince Andrew, whose diminished role in the family had been subtly addressed earlier, now faced an even starker reality. The Queen had made it clear that his public responsibilities would not be reinstated, a decision that sent a clear message about the family's priorities. Andrew's expression remained neutral, but the tension in his posture was impossible to miss. It was a difficult moment for Anne, who had always maintained a close relationship with her younger brother, but her sense of duty overrode any personal conflict. Meanwhile, Prince William and Kate Middleton emerged as central figures in the Queen's vision. The will placed a significant emphasis on their roles as future leaders of the monarchy, entrusting them with both material and symbolic inheritances. Beyond the jewels and estates, the Queen's directives for William and Kate included plans for increased public engagement and the modernization of certain royal traditions. These changes were met with quiet approval from some and guarded skepticism from others. Perhaps the most unexpected revelation came with the Queen's plans for Balmoral. The estate, long considered a personal sanctuary for the royal family, was to undergo a transformation. While its private use by the family would continue, the Queen had envisioned parts of Balmoral being repurposed as a public retreat. This decision was rooted in her belief that the monarchy should not only preserve history, but also create spaces where the public could connect with its legacy. The idea was met with mixed reactions. For Anne, who had inherited a significant share of Balmoral's stewardship, it was a bittersweet moment, an acknowledgement of her mother's progressive vision, but also a reminder of the shifting tides within the family. As Anne read on, the attention turned to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. While the Queen had made provisions for their children, Archie and Lilibet, her words for Harry were pointed yet measured. She acknowledged his departure from royal duties, expressing hope that he would find his path while always remaining connected to the family's legacy. It was a delicate balancing act, recognizing Harry's independence while subtly reaffirming the expectations that came with his lineage. The Queen's recognition of Harry stood in stark contrast to her silence on Meghan. This omission did not go unnoticed, and it added another layer of complexity to an already fraught relationship. For Harry, the Queen's words were likely both a comfort and a reminder of the bridge he had yet to fully cross. For the rest of the family, it was a moment that underscored the ongoing challenges of maintaining unity in a time of profound change. As Anne folded the papers and placed them neatly on the table, the room remained silent. The weight of what had been revealed hung heavily in the air, a mix of hope, uncertainty, and unresolved tension. The Queen's will, for all its foresight and wisdom, had laid bare the complexities of the royal family. It was not merely a roadmap for the monarchy's future, but a mirror reflecting its past and present struggles. The family dispersed once again, their faces betraying the myriad emotions stirred by the reading. Outside Buckingham Palace, the media continued its relentless speculation, piecing together fragments of information to craft narratives that would dominate the headlines. Inside, the family faced a more intimate reckoning. The Queen's vision for the monarchy's evolution was bold, but it left as many questions as answers. In the quiet moments that followed, Princess Anne lingered in the drawing room, her gaze fixed on the stack of papers before her. The decisions her mother had made were both profound and practical, yet they carried an undeniable emotional weight. As she prepared for the final session, Anne couldn't help but reflect on the legacy her mother had left behind, a legacy that now rested in the hands of those she had trusted most. The challenge was clear: to honor that legacy while navigating the uncharted waters ahead. The atmosphere within Buckingham Palace was a strange mix of finality and unease as the family prepared for the last reading of the Queen's will. This was the moment where her final words would bring together the fragments of her vision, revealing the full scope of her intentions. Princess Anne, who had shouldered the task with grace and resolve, seemed almost reluctant as she took her seat. The weight of these final revelations was palpable, and everyone present understood that once this session concluded, there would be no turning back. The room fell silent as Anne began to read, her voice steady but softer than before. The Queen's concluding section was less about the division of assets and more about her reflections on the monarchy's future. In her characteristic style, the Queen struck a tone that was both pragmatic and deeply personal. She acknowledged the challenges the family faced, the scrutiny they endured, and the shifting dynamics of a modern world that often clashed with centuries-old traditions. Her first focus was King Charles. The Queen expressed her confidence in his ability to lead, but she did not shy away from offering candid advice. She urged him to embrace the changes necessary to keep the monarchy relevant while remaining true to its roots. Her words were both supportive and directive, a gentle reminder that his reign would be judged not just by his adherence to tradition, but by his willingness to adapt. For Prince William, the Queen's message was one of hope and responsibility. She spoke of the importance of preparing the next generation, not just for their roles as royals, but as individuals capable of connecting with the people they serve. William's role, she emphasized, was to bridge the gap between the monarchy's past and its future. Her words were a clear endorsement of the path he and Kate had already begun to carve out, one that balanced duty with accessibility. As Anne continued, the Queen's words turned to Princess Anne herself. It was a rare moment of personal acknowledgement for a woman who had often been described as the monarchy's unsung hero. The Queen expressed her gratitude for Anne's unwavering dedication, describing her as the backbone of the family during some of its most turbulent times. Her legacy, the Queen wrote, would be one of steadfast service and quiet strength, a model for future generations. Then came the most anticipated part, the Queen's final personal letter. This was not addressed to an individual but to the family as a whole. Anne's voice wavered slightly as she began to read, the emotion in her tone unmistakable. The letter was heartfelt and reflective, offering a glimpse into the private thoughts of a woman who had carried the weight of the crown for over 7 decades. The Queen spoke of her pride in the family's resilience, even in the face of public scrutiny and personal trials. She urged them to set aside their differences and come together, not just for the sake of the monarchy, but for each other. Unity, she wrote, is the foundation upon which our legacy is built. Without it, we are merely individuals bound by history, but divided by our choices. Her words carried a sense of urgency, a recognition that the family's challenges were not just external but deeply rooted in their personal relationships. The letter acknowledged the pain of recent years, the rift with Harry, the controversies surrounding Andrew, and the shifting roles of the younger generation. Yet, the Queen expressed her unwavering belief that reconciliation was possible if they chose to embrace it. As Anne read the final lines, the room was heavy with emotion. The Queen's closing words were simple but profound. Our strength lies not in our titles or traditions, but in our ability to adapt and endure. Remember this, and the future will always be brighter than the past. The silence that followed was different from the earlier readings. It wasn't marked by tension or unease, but by reflection. Each family member seemed lost in their own thoughts, processing the depth of the Queen's message. For some, her words were a call to action. For others, they were a reminder of the work still left undone. In the days that followed, the public began to learn fragments of what the Queen had left behind. Reports surfaced about her dedication to preserving both tradition and modernity, her symbolic gestures toward reconciliation, and her enduring hope for the family's unity. The narrative that emerged was one of a monarch who, even in her final act, sought to guide her family and her nation toward a better future. Within the palace, however, the family faced a more complex reality. The Queen's will had answered some questions but left others hanging in the air. Could the shared responsibilities bring them closer together, or would they deepen the divides that had already begun to form? Could they truly honor her vision while grappling with their own individual ambitions and struggles? Princess Anne, ever the pragmatist, knew the answer would not come overnight. The Queen's words were a starting point, not a conclusion. As she sat alone in the drawing room after the final reading, she allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. Folding the Queen's letter carefully, she placed it back in its envelope. her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. The monarchy, like the family itself, was at a crossroads. The Queen's legacy was secure, but the path forward was uncertain. For Anne, for Charles, for William, and for every member of the family, the challenge was clear: to carry the Queen's vision into the future while finding their own way through an ever-changing world. The Queen's will had been read, but its impact would resonate for years to come. In that moment, one thing was certain: her influence, her wisdom, and her love would remain with them, guiding them through whatever came next. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come that far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.